What is up? What is up, everybody? Nice to meet you. This is the behind the scenes stories of busy professionals. Rob here with Mark Santiago. Before we get started, this episode is brought to you by Get Ghosted, a LinkedIn ghostwriting and profile management service. Sometimes people are on Instagram and Facebook because it's more appealing. LinkedIn is boring, but a lot of business on LinkedIn. So if you're not on LinkedIn, you're missing out. Go to thedigitalwritingfirm.com if you're interested in getting your champion method profile edit. It's free, but you get to optimize a profile with the information that gets over to you. With that being said, this dude, Mark, is a cool dude, man. We met in a mastermind kind of coaching program not too long ago. And I remember when he changed from what he was doing then into what he's doing now, which is also my heart, because I was just telling Mark that last year I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't walk, couldn't talk. It was nuts. And I think it was spiritually induced. I believe that the Lord works miracles. And part of my responsibility in response to God was to use my voice, but then also to start mentoring and disciple men, which is what Mark does. And I wanted to bring him on to shed some light on why that's so important, but then also what he's doing differently that gets the transformation, because I've seen some testimonies of people's lives getting changed and relationships getting repaired and all these miracles and all that stuff. So we got to get this guy on. To get us started, though, is our signature question, our ignition question, which is, bro, in the last 12 months of your life, if you were to assess that and then turn that into a Netflix special, what would that movie be called and why? The last
Gosh,
12 months.
I feel like this was a question I should have had eight weeks ago so I could have thought about it, prepared. I don't even know what I would call it because the last 12 months have been absolutely insane with the
Mm.
amount of internal growth as well as external pruning. I guess you could say pruning would
Yeah.
be the best way to put it, where God takes away all the dead branches so that you could grow healthy. And there was a lot of cutting, a lot of pruning to me personally, my ego, who I
Mm.
am, to my team, all the things. So I'll just say pruning. That's the
Wow.
word.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. And it sounds like it happened personally and professionally, or was one more than the other?
I would say they were connected very much because of the person I was becoming due to success was not the best version of me, meaning that I was showing up in ways that I didn't like and wanted to not go that route. And there was a lot of ego that needed to die. And God knows how to bring those things to fruition. And you can either go kicking and screaming or you can go fully into his will and go with it, go with what he has for you. So I was like, you know what? I'd rather go your way because it's better than I do.
That's really interesting. That's really interesting because you're doing God's work, right? What you're doing with empowered men is you're helping to essentially disciple them. And so there's growth and healing, right? But you still found yourself tangled up with some ego while still doing God's work.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how you could escape it in that sense. It's the Pharisees, right? It's like they were doing
Yeah.
God's work, but they became full of pride, full of ego in everything they were doing. Yeah, that's the way I look at it.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Empowered Man program and what you actually do with them?
Yeah. So, in a nutshell, men come to me in various stages of going through a separation or divorce. And so, as they're going through this, it's usually like, I want to save my marriage, or my marriage is probably over, and I want to do some sort of personal work. So, we walk them through these stages of separation, divorce. A lot of times it's creating a new marriage, but most of the time it's not. Most of the time, the marriage is over. A lot of infidelity. About 75% of my clients have been cheated on or are being actively cheated on by their wives. And so what I decided to do is, instead of just go to the market and say, how do we manipulate women to come back into the marriage? I said, how do we make men so valuable that their wives want to come back to them?
Mm.
And so that's my whole focus, is helping you not change who you are, but heal who you've become. And the only way we can do that is by accessing the depths of who you are as a man, to uncover those, not just wounds, right? We're not therapists, we're coaches, but to uncover the little boy inside, help him raise up to the man he's supposed to be, not in a toxic way, not in a beating my chest kind of way, but just literally taking ownership over the things I can control. So everything is my, not fault, but everything is my responsibility. Because fault is shame, responsibility is leadership.
We're not even 5 minutes in, dude, and you're dropping some haymakers, man. Wow. So fault is shame. And what was the other one? Something.
So fault is shame, and responsibility is leadership. So meaning that a lot of men think that it's my fault, and it's no, it's not your fault. It's your responsibility, right? You didn't cause your wife to cheat on you. You didn't make her spread her legs and screw some other guy. You just showed up in a way, though, that made her feel unsafe. And there was things in your marriage that you can work on. The cheating isn't your fault. It's still your responsibility to do something about it for your family, for yourself, for your future. So I go, if I can recreate men from the ground up, and then they either save their marriage or what I call recreate a new marriage, or they move on and become healthy versions of themselves, great. That's what I did. I went through a very toxic, nasty divorce. I was married for 17 years, had 4 kids, and was able to recreate my life through healing, through transformation, through multiple coaches, multiple counselors, multiple therapists, etc., and came to this place of being married to a new person. So I've been married now for almost 4 years to my wife, Amy. We have 7 kids combined. We run a multi-million-dollar company. We do all these things. I volunteer, all this stuff. And it's like, how did I get from
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
to brokenness with a 500 credit score and no money in the bank to being super successful, all that? It's this journey of ownership. It's this path of saying, I am responsible for everything. Everything that's good or bad is my responsibility. And so that's what we teach our guys. That's like the very foundation of what we do.
That must be tough to take them from victimhood and depression and anxiety to a posture of like power. There's a lot. How long is that process typically on average? How long have you seen people go from woe is me to let's take on the world?
Yeah, a lot of times they won't even start working with me until they've decided to own their shit, is what I call it. I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss on here, but that's what I call it, is owning your shit. Because a lot of times if they come to me as a victim, I'm going to smack them in the face real quick and remind them that they're not a victim. They're a victor if they choose to be. And it's all that self-induced shame, feel sorry for me, woe is me. I'm not going to feel sorry for anybody. I've been through everything you could possibly be through. I'm not going to feel sorry for you. And so what my job, my goal is, I'll empathize with you and I'll understand the pain that you're in because I've been there, but I'm not going to feel sorry for you. And so you have to make a decision. Do I want to be a 10-year-old boy with no hair on his nuts, or do I want to grow into the man that I'm supposed to become? And I have to decide if I'm going to become that. And if I'm not going to become that, I'm not your guy. Go, there's 15 other groups out there. There's 100 other groups out there who will tell you how to save your marriage by manipulating your wife. I'm not that guy for you.
Wow. So how do these guys find you and then realize that they need to work a little bit more and then come, like, how do they end up finding you?
Yeah. A combination of things. Obviously, I do a lot of Facebook advertising, and then I've got a podcast and YouTube. And I would say the bulk of the work is done like on the YouTube videos where guys they'll start listening to my YouTube, they'll start digesting. I've got hundreds and hundreds of videos on there, I think over 1,000 total. And they'll listen to the content and they'll go, this either makes sense or I hate this guy. And that's on purpose because I don't want people liking me. I want them to going, I'm all in on his message, or no, I can't stand this guy. That's just what I decided to do.
Yeah. I like it. And how long did it take for you and your process to get to a point where you felt built back together and healed and ready to move on?
So I would say about a year total, but probably about 6 months into that, I had some massive growth moments. There was also a journey because like I had gone through so much in my marriage where my first marriage, where there was a lot of infidelity. There was a lot of stuff that had happened over years and multiple times of reconciliation that by the time I got to the end, it was like dying a slow death. And it was
Mm,
like, so I processed and grieved while we were still like living separated.
mm.
And it started because she told me I needed to go to counseling. And so I did. I started talking to coaches and therapists, and I started recognizing the bigger picture of her own, I'll just call it what it is, mental disorders that she had, and didn't understand the dynamics that we had, didn't understand manipulation, didn't understand boundaries, didn't understand any of those power dynamics. And so I was living under this for years, decades almost, and didn't understand it. And so once I started taking back my power and saying, no, I'm going to set a boundary here. This is not okay. I can love you, but I'm not going to do what you asked me to do in this case situation. That's when things started to fall apart from a relationship standpoint. And I recognize that I can unconditionally love somebody, but I don't have to let them into my life. I can love them from afar. And that's what I chose to do. Because for so long, especially in faith, it's like, oh, you forgive. And I think you can forgive. But at the same time, I think you can say, hey, but you don't get a place in my life. You've lost that opportunity.
Dude, there's so much power in your positioning and the words that you say and that rationale. Like, I can only imagine how the men feel when they're making that transition. You know what I mean?
For some of them, they get pretty either scared,
Yeah.
triggered, or they run. It can be very interesting because, as you can see, I'm not trying to beat anybody up with this message, but it definitely can be very confronting, and it confronts our reality. But it's the truth I live every day. When I wake up every day, I'm living what I call this 5-dimensional life as a man, which is me, my internal world, my external world. So me as a man, me as a lover, me as a father, me as a leader, me as a producer. That's the 5-dimensional man. And so that's what we help men build back up into is 5-dimensional men who aren't just living as producers making a killing in the world, but they're actually killing everything in the sense that they're not just great providers financially, but they're great emotional providers. They're great fathers. They're great leaders in their home and their community. They're great leaders internally. They pay attention to their emotions. Most men have no idea how to process emotions and what they're actually feeling. And so that's what we help them do, is get to articulate that. That's where I think the disconnect and the desperation in men. I can't remember who had said this, that most men live quiet lives of desperation. And that always stuck with me. John Eldredge wrote about that in a book called Wild at Heart, but he quoted somebody. I always forget who actually said it. I should get the quote and figure it out. But that quiet lives of desperation is so many men because we live disconnected lives. Men don't know how to articulate what we feel, so we feel disconnected. And when we feel disconnected, we are isolated and alone. That creates depression. And that depression then just continues to just cycle and cycle. So then when we're with our wives, we don't know what to do. We don't know what to say. We don't know how to communicate. We think she's looking for this big, strong guy instead of just being vulnerable and saying, I feel scared right now that we're not paying our bills. I feel scared right now that I'm not able to perform sexually. I feel scared right now that these things are happening, these very vulnerable, intimate moments. And your wife is craving that, but you don't know how to give that to her. And so over time, the wife disconnects. She finds somebody else, whatever happens, and you're left going, I was a good husband. I never cheated. I took her out on dates. I said, I love you. I took her on vacations, but she still didn't want to be with me. Yeah, but dude, she never knew you. Same thing with Jesus. Same thing. He says, I don't know you. Get away from me.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that's pretty heavy. Now, I know you mentioned that the majority of the guys that you work with have been cheated on.
Yeah, good
Is
portion.
there a flip side where you work with guys that have been the infidelator and is trying to regain their healing and all that stuff?
Occasionally, yes. Most of them know. And the reason why is because most of them are trying to manipulate their wife back. They don't want to take ownership over what they did. And so essentially, they're going at it from a, how do I fix her? How do I fix the situation? Not how do I heal from what I did first, then going back. And it's the same thing I teach guys. I have this whole continuum. I call it coming back to the marriage. And it's, if your wife has had an affair, there's a certain like process that she needs to go through before you can actually reconcile. And if she hasn't done that process, and if she's skipping those steps, there's no way that you can actually reconcile. Same thing for men. There has to be that process in order for you guys to have a full, transparent relationship again.
So it sounds like ownership is a big deal. That's a prerequisite.
Number one. Yeah. I don't think I've ever signed up a guy that stayed in our program that didn't take ownership. It just won't happen.
That's huge.
I have this saying where I go, a lot of guys come to me who feel guilty about the things that have happened. And there's something that has to happen where there's a conviction to make transformation, right? Where they become convicted within themselves to make an effort, to make change, to make transformation. But there's a bridge between guilt and conviction. It's called ownership. Ownership is the bridge from guilt to conviction. You can come all day and feel bad and feel shame and feel all these things about how bad you were or a bad life is. But if you have zero ownership, you'll never be convicted to actually make changes and to do the things you're supposed to do.
Dude, that's massive. And it sounds right now, just in the landscape of Christian leadership, we've got some pretty significant men, pastors, leaders that have fallen publicly, but are now making their comeback, taking ownership, and then jumping back on platforms to tell their story. If you were to give advice to the young men that are just as capable, just as charismatic as these guys that are super famous and all that stuff, what would you tell them in terms of learn from those guys? And they're willing to put themselves out so that we can learn, right? What would your counsel be to those guys?
One of the things we talk about, I just, the 5-dimensional man, right? And the key thing is this, is that I have this drawing I do, and I could always send you the diagram, but it's this, is that most men focus on being a producer before everything, which is what can I produce in this world? Being a producer makes me feel like a man. If I'm not making 100 grand, if I'm not doing these things, if I'm not paying the bills, I don't feel like a man. Totally makes sense from just the way we're wired. And so we attack everything through that lens of what do I do? Same thing with ministry. All these pastors, like, they find their identity in what they do and who they are from that perspective. And then what happens is then your wife, then your kids, then everything else, then you at the end. You are the last thing. And then when men go through all of this, they switch it around and the wife becomes the first thing, the primary thing. And they're like begging and pleading and like hoping she'll change it. And they'll stop everything they're doing. They don't hang out with their buddies anymore. They don't look at porn. They don't do anything other than focus on her. And then maybe your kids. And then after that, maybe your job. And then again, you are the last thing. And so I have this whole thing is we have to invert the whole script so that
Mm.
you are primary in the middle. So you are in the middle, you as a man. Because if I can get you to look in the mirror and understand who you are and internally and not run from it, but actually, just like James even talks about, you look in the mirror, but you forget who you are, right? If I can get you to look in that mirror and actually know who you are identity wise,
Mm.
everything else flows from there. And so, what I would say to these guys is they need to look in the mirror every freaking day and they need to understand who they are. Because here's the thing: is you can't be a man until you become a son first. You have to be a son before you can be a man. And most men are trying to be men who've never been sons. They don't know how
Wow.
to be sons of the Father. They don't know how to be sons to the Father. And because of that, they have this massive father when they walk around in, trying to prove themselves in ministry. I did it for a long time, tried to find this identity in ministry of I'm somebody special, I'm somebody famous. And at the end of the day, God don't care about none of that, because he could take anybody. He could take a donkey and preach it from a mountaintop. He doesn't need you. You're just as good as a donkey to him. Think about that, right? It's, dude, you're not that special. God could use anybody or anything. He could use some broken, crippled kid in India. He could use some overweight person. He could use whoever he wants. He chose you. He gave you a grace to speak the gospel. He gave you a grace to be charismatic, to do all those things. But none of that matters until you've learned how to become a son first.
Son first. Dude, that's crazy. And then part of your program is to help them be in a position. Oh, what is this? Okay, turn that thing off. I need to turn that. Is to put men in a position for a new relationship, right? If that's part of.
If that's part of it, yeah. Some guys, a lot of guys obviously want that. They don't want to just get divorced and go crawl up in a bottle. They want to eventually get remarried. And yeah, I would say a good portion of my guys, I have guys that have been with me now for 4 years as clients. And they started out in this one journey and they've grown and grown for years and years, have moved past the divorce, are getting remarried. Some get remarried in a year, whatever it is. And it's really cool to see those guys with successful second marriages. I probably don't even talk about that enough, but it's so cool to see them be happy again and all those things. And the same for myself. I married an incredible woman who I almost didn't want to marry because she was so healthy that I was like, you make me sick because you're so functional and not toxic. I didn't have any of the push pull with her. Tried to break it off with her and she fought for me. And I was like, you know what? Let's do this. So I've been very fortunate, very blessed, man. Like I don't deserve anything that I have other than what God gives me and the grace that he's given me. And I just try to be a good steward of that.
Yeah. Is there a common thread that you see in those guys that have resurfaced and started new relationships? Is there like a one thing that you can see as a pattern across all of them?
They didn't attract the same person.
Ooh.
Because what a lot of times guys do is cycle through the same woman with a different face and a different body, but it's the same person. It's the same toxic traits. It's the same push pull behaviors, especially with the ones who marry, like I did. I married someone toxic who had a personality disorder, cheating, all that stuff. And so you find yourself doing that. And a lot of that, man, the psychological things about mother wounds and father wounds and all that stuff. But realistically, it's like we just create these cycles and patterns in ourselves and we just keep attracting the same person. So one of the very first questions I asked them is, what inside of you attracted this woman in the first place? That's how you can take ownership. You can't take ownership for her affair, but you can take ownership for the fact that you attracted this person into your life. I had to do that. I had to look hard at what in me attracted them. I was the white knight. I was the savior. I was going to be basically like dad to her because that filled an ego inside of me that
Mhm.
made me feel important, that made me feel a certain way because I had to protect her. I had to do all those things. And it's just all psychologically. I don't want to get too much into the psychology of it, but in doing so, it created these narratives. It created this life that I was this person. It was all ego and it wasn't reality. And it wasn't a relationship that was healthy at all. It was very much a relationship of I'm above you, but at the same time, she was above me. And it was this toxic stuff.
So was it like a shock to meet somebody that's completely different, but like you said, super healthy? Was it almost like a culture shock?
Oh, yeah. It was super weird because basically, I still remember when we were dating, it was like I was attracted to her, but it wasn't like the lustful type of attraction. And it was so strange for me. I didn't have the puppy dog love, the infatuation type stuff. And I'm like, what is this? I just really liked being in her presence. And she was beautiful. It was like all that, but it was like so different. And I just remember kind of God saying to me, like, dude, if you just give me time, we'll work through all of those things, but this is healthy. This is what it should look like.
Mm.
And her and I even remember, I just remember going, it's so easy to be with you. But I had prayed a year before. I said, God, I just want peace in my life. And he's here. I'm dropping peace right in front of you. This is it. This is the person. This is peace. And I'm like, this is what it feels like. It's
Yeah.
amazing, but I'm scared of it. I think so many of us are scared of peace. We're scared of healthy. We're scared of functionality because we're so used to push pull. We're so used, especially entrepreneurs, we're so used to having to prove ourselves. We're so used to all the conflict and all of those things because that's what makes us good at what we do. But then we're doing it from a place of weakness, not from a place of strength.
Mm.
And so I'm like, I'm going to switch this thing. Instead of doing it from a place of need, I'm going to do it from a place of grace and a place of strength. And that's where the pruning has come from in the last year, where I was trying to prove so badly that I deserved here, I deserve these accolades, I deserve to be known and all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm gonna go not hide, but I'm basically gonna go in my cave. And I've been in David's cave for the last year, working on things, fixing things, changing things. And I think we're ready to come out of that cave.
Yeah. How did you handle that? Because before you're out there, you're speaking, you're very public, and like people notice you, and you're very effective, not only in the business, but also in church. And then when that happened, you divorced and all that, that obviously was hurtful. How did you deal with that transition from being all over the place and then this really big issue that you got to come out of, and then trying to piece things together and then meet somebody and start posting and sharing that information again?
Yeah, I think it's hard to say exactly, but I feel like I had created a lot of false narratives for myself, and that was the projection I was putting out into the world. And a lot of it I didn't know. It wasn't like purposeful at all. It was just like when you see a child playing in a sandbox and they're pretending they're president of the United States. Like that's the world I was living in. When God thought it was cute, and then my world came crumbling down. And you realize what you're made of in those moments and those times. And I had to go through my season of being mad at God. I had to go through
Yeah.
my season of I never disbelieved God, but I definitely had to go through the season of this was supposed to be the person you brought me. This was supposed to be all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, I'm gonna live my life. If you want to be a part of it, great. If you don't, whatever. And that was my attitude because I was hurt. I was jaded. It took a couple of years to come back to that. And he's graceful, man. He's merciful to still have his hand on me and still give me platform to give me what he does. And I just try to keep a contrite heart about it.
Man. And how long have you been remarried now? 4 years?
Almost 4 years. Almost 4 years. Yeah, this October. Yeah.
Yeah. And how long have you known, like, how long did you know her before you guys got married?
Almost 2 years, about a year and a half. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Decent amount
That's
of
not
time.
bad. Yeah. Good
Yeah, it was
job.
just one of those things where we both had moved on from our marriages and we both had made decisions about the life we wanted to live. And I think it's different too when you're older. I was in my 40s and I already had 4 kids. I wasn't trying to find someone to have more kids with or any of that stuff. And we just worked so well. It was just like, even though on paper our personality types are so different, but because we had both had matured and we both knew what we wanted, like our values were aligned and they still are aligned. And because of that, we work so symbiotic. It's incredible.
Did you ever think that you'd be able to be in this position again?
To be honest, like where I'm at now is way beyond anything I've ever done ever in my life. Entrepreneurially, platform wise, I was living a scared dream bubble for so many years. When I had my last company, I did the marketing thing and was a marketing agency and all that stuff. And I was never, I kept hidden, even though I was like out there. And even with this, like I'm one of those people. It's like, I like speaking, I like doing those things, but I've always been self deprecating and always been like, there's somebody else better than me, etc. And it's still taking me years to get to this point of going, and even in my business, I'll share a quick tidbit is I had basically taken half of my business and gave it to somebody and said, okay, you be the director of this business and I'll just worry about this part. You just worry about that part, thinking I was just delegating. And what I was really doing was hiding from the requirement of me, hiding from what I didn't think I was actually able to do.
Mm.
And almost living this sort of fantasy of people are coming to me because of my voice and all this stuff, but you guys get the results. I'll just hide back here. And it was like, no, that's not how it works. And that's not really what was going on. And for years it worked that way and it was successful. But ultimately I had to cut that off and recognize that I needed to take back my kingdom. I needed to take back my company. And that was the part of the pruning process that began and started to uncover some of the evil in a sense that was happening that was not okay. And when I did that, I was like, at my own message, I take full responsibility. I take complete ownership of where we are today and where we will be tomorrow. And it's been an incredible journey, an incredible process. My faith is like way up here now compared to where it was. Because there was a point where I was like, why am I even doing this? Maybe I should shut the doors. And God was like, dude, what? No, we're not doing that. And I'm like, okay, you're right. We're not doing that. That was dumb. I'm just being selfish right now and feeling sorry for myself. Stop
Yeah.
feeling
Yeah.
sorry for yourself. Get your ass up and let's go. Okay, you said you want to be healed, right? Get up, let's go. Just like he said to the guy in Matthew. Do you want to
Yeah.
be made? Get up, take your mat, and let's go. So that's the way Jesus talks to me sometimes. I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, I got you.
uh,
Let's do this.
yeah.
Stop feeling
And
sorry for yourself.
your wife has been instrumental in the growth too, in the business, and you guys tag
Huge.
team on it.
She plays, I call her my personal life coach because she like
Yes.
really plays this intricate part of knowing how my brain works and like calling me out on my stuff and just literally, hey, you said this, but you're doing this or whatever. So it's okay, I see that, you're right. Or what are you talking about? This is your company, like you're in charge. Like what? So it's a lot of those types of things that she's been instrumental. She definitely helps behind the scenes in a lot of things. Like all of our events she goes to and she does a Q&A session with me and the live events that we do. And the guys absolutely love her perspective. She knows how to kick them in the balls and tell
Yeah.
them the way it is.
Yeah. 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 Do you host live events every quarter?
Yeah, we do. We do it quarterly in person, and what do you call it? We basically do it all over the country. So we basically do like an Airbnb, have 20 guys come in, and we do a 2.5 day in-person event. It's part of our clients, so it's for clients only right now.
Okay.
I'd
Okay.
like to be able to I really want to be able to do more of that event stuff, but one off like in Atlanta or something like that, and have 100 guys come in, and I do a day-long session, go from there. I know that's part of that is my gifting, is to do those in-person things because my real anointing is healing. That is for whatever
Mm.
reason, God has given me the ability to help men heal. And it's like, how do you sell a program like that? You don't. You give them practical tools, you give them practical things that make sense to their brain. But in the midst of that, you bring healing. Like a mindset coach, they don't really sell mindset, they sell business growth. So I'm helping guys, it literally become better communicators. We're really good at teaching those things, better leaders. We're really good at teaching the practical things, but I would say that the strain across all of Empowered Man as we help men heal. We call ourselves a fathering business. That means that we help men be fathered for the first time ever in their lives.
Ooh. Dude, yeah, you should do your like circuit, go speak to men's groups and stuff, man. I think there's a huge gap in men's ministry that we're so focused on being this masculine doer that we forget deeper things. And there's cracks in character. Now we can perform in public and go and parking and all that stuff and don't come in here. But the deeper things just not there. So I think you should at some point just start traveling and speaking, man, because yeah, I can sense it.
That would be great. I would love to add that to the repertoire. Trust me.
Yeah.
I sit in my home office. I'm like, just let me out, let me out, let me
Yeah.
out.
Do you have bandwidth? Do you have bandwidth to go on a Sunday or a Tuesday and fly out and speak for an hour to men's groups?
Yeah, for sure. It just
Okay.
obviously boundaries have to be around it. We
Yeah.
have five,
Skip.
let's see, four, technically six of our kids are still at home. Another one's about to go to college because we have two adult children. So
Right.
we're getting to that stage where more and more are going out. But I told my wife when we met, I was like, but about 5 years or so, I'm going to be speaking publicly again. I'm going to be traveling. I'm going to be doing those things. So if you're going to be with me, know that is going to be part of the life I live. And we started to do that with our events, and she loves it. It's amazing. She loves to travel with me. And we don't position it as a duo because I don't want to be one of these marriage ministry people. That's
Yeah.
not what
Yeah.
I do. I
Yeah.
am a men's personal development coach who helps men heal from the trauma and they've been through. And she comes alongside and we do incredible work together and really even into the prophetic and stuff, even though that's never been her background. That's what we really operate into. And it's not a thus saith the Lord. It's this is what we see in you. God sees something in you that needs to be released, and we're going to release that over you right now. That's the real power right there, man.
Man, this is great. This is great. This is great. I'm gonna be praying, man, about introducing you to some people and maybe try to open some doors and stuff.
That'd be awesome.
I like doing that kind of stuff.
What we want to do, just to share the vision real quick, is we want to create boots on the ground, not to replace men's groups, but to really create like we have something so authentic in our community. We have probably 80% of the guys that come to our stuff are church, like are Christians.
Yeah.
But they come to us because the local church can't help them because they go to these men's groups and they're told, pray for your wife, wash her feet. And all that's great from a
Yeah.
spiritual standpoint, but there's no practicality to any of it whatsoever. And pastors, God bless them, they are not equipped to help men go through this, especially because they're thinking about both the wife and the husband. They're there for the whole flock, not just the man. And so where we come in, and this is why therapists will send people our way, counselors and some people our way, because they see the impact it has on these men's lives and the transformation that they get out of it because of the men they're becoming because of this group. because of this community. So we want to do boots on the ground, we call it, where we have groups in Atlanta, groups in LA, groups in all these places to build part of that what I call the 5-dimensional man council. That is the next evolution of what we're doing in Empowered Man, is building this council of 5-dimensional men who are being impactful in all 5 dimensions of life and growing in all of that. That's true fatherhood. That's true sonship. That's true leadership. That's true rolling of all the prophetic ministry into one.
Dude, that's crazy. Have you started? Do you have a pilot or a beta group that's running?
Not yet. That's on the table. There's just a lot of other things that I've been having to work on to fix from a marketing standpoint. There was holes there that I had to fix, getting some of those things away, be rehiring sales team, all that. I basically cut everything. I cut sales. I cut everybody out that was just crowding the business out because we grew too fast. We were $100,000 a month in 6 months. It was so much. And for years we ran like boom, like just years, millions of dollars. We've been very successful. And I was like, we got to a point where I'm like, this is unsustainable the way we're trying to do this, rolling through salespeople, et cetera. There wasn't good, the marketing was good, but it wasn't good enough. And there needed to be some fixes. And so that's what we've been working on, is fixing those things. And once some of those things are fixed, then I can get out of the sales role again and have other people do that stuff for me and go from there.
Yeah, dude, I'm a fan, man. Just seeing your story and watching from a distance, I can see God's hand in it. And now just hearing it, it's crazy. Count me in, dude. Whatever I could do to support and help and be a boots on the ground or whatever. I'll take your curriculum and run it, test it with our little booth here.
Yeah.
I have a passion for men. Yeah, definitely, especially young men. I've got a 14-year-old son. I want him to grow up better than I was. So yeah, I'm all for it, dude. Where can people find Empowered Man and you?
All over. You can find me on YouTube. I think the YouTube is at Empowered Man, I believe is the thing. But empoweredman.co is our website link. I'm on Facebook. We got a Facebook group, free, empoweredman.co/group. They can go to that. There's like 22,000 guys in there. So there's plenty of support, plenty of stuff happening. Podcast on Apple, Spotify, whatever. It's Empowered AF is the podcast. Yeah. So you can find it everywhere.
Yeah. Cool. All right, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Logistically, with Riverside, this has to show 100% upload before we can actually leave. I'm going to stop the recording to let it upload. And then we can leave after it says 100%, because right now it's 92. And if I don't do it, if we don't get it at 100%, then it'll be disjointed and all that stuff. So with that being said, go to empoweredman.co if you're a dude and talk to your men's group leader. See if you can get Mark to, if you want him to zoom in, fly in, whatever. Yeah, you need to get a lot more stronger, guys, right? And stop being a victim and all that stuff and start taking ownership, because there's a lot at stake for men on this planet and advancing the kingdom. So yeah, this is the dude to follow, man. All right.